This program is brought to you by Real Estimate, Australia's #1 property value estimate. Get your real estimate today on realestate.com.au.
Welcome back to Business Now, taking a look at this week's auctions data. There are 2,091 auctions scheduled nationally this week. Sydney will hold the majority of them at 903, followed by Melbourne, which will have 412. Brisbane has 129 auctions scheduled, followed by Adelaide at 163 and Canberra 114. And some of the most viewed auctions this week include 12 Bayswater Street in Drummoyne in New South Wales. It's a 3-bedroom freestanding terrace-style home with 2 car spots. Sitting on a 360 square metre block, the home has been partially renovated and comes with a DA, but you can add some of your own final touches to it. 36 William Street, Ringwood in Victoria is a 4-bedroom home on an 832 square metre block. It has a price guide of between $1.15 and $1.25 million. The home is located in a private yet peaceful position, featuring a large backyard, elevated deck and timber flooring. Well, this stunner, 26 McNally Drive, Sunshine Beach in Queensland, is a modern 4-bedroom luxury home. It's an award-winning home featuring 180 degrees of coral sea views. The oversized bedrooms all come with plush carpet, custom-made bed heads, as well as bespoke finishes. And this week's top listing is 108 St George's Road in Toorak in Victoria. It's a 4-level, 6-bedroom home sitting on a large 1,735 square metre block, and it's being sold through an Expressions of Interest campaign as a masterpiece of design and luxury. The listing comes from the co-founder of the former music festival Stereosonic, and it's listed his waterfront mansion as one of Toorak's most tightly held pockets. And the price tag, a whopping $23 to $25 million. And to take us through this week's property data, I spoke with REA Group senior economist Anne Flaherty earlier today and asked how this week's Melbourne Cup Carnival will affect auction clearance rates.
Well, we've definitely seen a big slowdown this weekend. That's driven by Melbourne. We had a real bumper weekend last week in Melbourne with a lot of people looking to sell ahead of the Melbourne Cup weekend. But this weekend will be very, very quiet in Melbourne. What we will see, though, is that selling activity will pick up again from next week onwards when we do have a lot more properties coming up for sale.
Now, what's the trend that you're seeing in the auction market? Are there more homes coming onto the market this week?
Well, we've certainly seen a national reduction that's been driven by fewer homes for sale in Melbourne. There's less than 500 auctions in Melbourne this weekend. Last week, in contrast, there were 1,700 auctions in Melbourne. But we will see activity pick up again over the remainder of spring. It's the most popular time of year to sell a home, and we are going to continue to see more activity in the market over the coming weeks.
Now, home prices, they've continued to climb in October, with PropTrack's latest home price index report revealing that prices have now risen nationally for the 10th consecutive month. Can you give us some data on this?
Yeah, look, absolutely. What we've seen is that for 10 consecutive months, every month this year, property prices have continued to increase in Australia. It's absolutely astonishing if you consider the fact that interest rates have increased so many times over the past 18 months and are sitting very high. It's also incredible that what we're continuing to see is that buyer demand is outweighing that supply of homes hitting the market. So even though people can't borrow as much, even though it's really expensive to borrow, property prices are just continuing to rise.
Now, Anne, prices have recovered the losses seen back in 2022, and they're reaching new peaks across Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide and even Perth. Why is that, despite the hikes in interest rates for most of the year?
It really just comes down to supply and demand. Everyone needs somewhere to live. And what we're seeing is that the number of homes hitting the market, even though it has picked up over spring, it hasn't picked up to the extent that buyers are out there looking. So what we're actually seeing on realestate.com is that even though people are searching for slightly cheaper properties than they were a year ago, they're actually buying at a higher price point, just because the reality is they have to stretch as far as they can go in order to be successful at bidding for a property.
And these prices, they look set to continue trending upwards over the next few years, with indication Australia's housing undersupply is set to worsen. Can you explain this to us?
Look, we do already have an undersupply of housing, and it looks very likely that undersupply is going to get worse. What we saw with the latest dwelling approvals figures is that nationally, dwelling approvals were 20% lower this September compared to the same September last year. Now, dwelling approvals, unfortunately, are your best case scenario for how many homes are going to get built. Just because a project is approved to be built doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get off the ground. At the same time that dwelling approval development activity is slowing, we're seeing really strong population growth. What this means is that we're very likely to continue to see an undersupply of homes to buy and also an undersupply of homes to rent.
Now, Anne, to finish up, let's talk about the rental market. Have vacancy rates improved at all?
Absolutely not. In fact, we have seen vacancy rates continue to decline. Over September, they fell to a new record low. Now, what this means is that for tenants out there who are looking for somewhere to live, often they're facing incredibly competitive conditions. We're seeing more tenants, offering several months upfront in advance in order to secure a property. And as I mentioned, with population growth back on, with the supply of new homes being developed slowing down, it's very unlikely that the rental market is going to ease off anytime soon.
So what are we seeing? Are we seeing families living together more so? Are we seeing groups of friends coming together to rent one property?
Well, it's an interesting question because we actually saw the average household size decrease pretty significantly during the COVID years, but we're now starting to see that trend reverse. So I think this is going to look like kids staying with mum and dad longer. We're also seeing more people to look in share homes. So on flatmates.com, a new record has been broken almost every month this year with the number of people signing up to the site. Now, these are people looking for a room to live in. They're also people offering a room. So what this suggests is that we're going to see a number of people move back into share houses, particularly as rents climb so rapidly.
Yes, that's right. A lot of intergenerational living at the moment. Anne Flaherty, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.